Not every game I talk about with this journal is going to be fueled by nostalgia. I like to try new games as well. After all, you won't fall in love with a game or series if you don't give it a chance. And with Tunic, I took that chance, and I came away pretty darn satisfied. Minor spoilers ahead. I'm not going to mention any story specifics, but I'll be outlining my feelings from my playthrough and mention some game mechanics and features. So if you want to play Tunic 100% blind, you've been warned. So what is Tunic? Well, it is an action-adventure game, which may be the broadest descriptor in video games, so let's break that down further. The word action refers to the combat of Tunic. You fight monsters with a sword and shield. Simple enough, right? Oh, my sweet summer child. Tunic changes a man. Anyway, I feel the adventure is at the forefront of Tunic, and it's the part that drove me to try Tunic in the first place. See, Tunic is styled after the classic Legend of Zelda games. You explore an overworld in a fantasy setting, go into dungeons to look for helpful items, and gather upgrades to your attributes such as health. And just look at the character you control, a cute anthropomorphic fox named the Fox. He's even modeled after Link, carrying a sword and shield and wearing a green tunic. That's the name of the game! So yeah, Tunic was clearly targeting fans of the earlier Zelda games. Remember how I started this one off by mentioning nostalgia? Even an original indie game found a way to play off people's childhoods in order to get eyeballs on it. But here's the thing. I never played Legend of Zelda growing up. Truthfully, I haven't given the games much of a chance, and it's hard to say why they never struck me as something that I needed to play. So why then would I, someone who has no connection to the inspiration of Tunic, be interested in playing it? Well, two things. The game's presentation and its discovery mechanic. Tunic is played from an isometric perspective, something that can be referred to as 2.5D. Rather than play the game as a 2D side-scroller like Super Mario Bros., or from a mostly top-down perspective like the classic Zelda or Pokemon games, you view the game world from a side angle that gives off the illusion of being 3D. Look, I don't know the technical aspects of how Tunic or modern isometric games are designed, but look at Qbert. Before 3D games were commonplace, isometric perspectives provided the closest experience to moving in 3 dimensions. My first experience with the isometric view was Sonic 3D Blast, and I remember how cool it was to find Tails or Knuckles hidden in one of those stages. Tunic takes this even further, using its unique perspective to hide secret passages and chests that are out of sight from the player's point of view. But you can usually tell where to look, and that brings me to Tunic's sense of discovery. When you start the game, you receive no direction on where to go. You essentially just wander around the overworld looking for anything you can pick up or interact with. You have no clue about the game's story or what you should be trying to do, and that's the point. But do not fret, fellow adventurer. Tunic has an instruction manual to help you out, which can be brought up with the pause menu. And I'm not talking about a bland help guide either. No, this manual is reminiscent of those from the 1980s. You know, the ones that tell you the premise of the game, give you tips on how to defeat the bosses, provide maps and hints on where to go, that sort of thing. Tunic has a catch, however. You have to find the pages of the game manual scattered across the world. And even when you find a page, a lot of the writing is in a made-up language, so you have to rely heavily on the visuals in the manual to gain knowledge on how the game works. I absolutely loved this idea. Your reward for exploring every corner of the game world is more insight into the story and world itself. And let me tell you, you'll feel compelled to explore every inch of this map. Every location serves a purpose, and there are no large empty spaces, so even if you aren't sure where you should be heading, you'll find something beneficial just by wandering around. And speaking of wandering around, I should definitely mention the feeling of being lost. I knew going into my playthrough that there was a good chance I would get stuck and not know where to go next. Luckily, I never felt that way. Sure, I didn't always know exactly where to go, but I never felt at a loss as to what I should be looking for or trying to do. Writing my thoughts out now, I realize that feeling lost or progressing at a slower pace is not necessarily a bad thing. Adventure games are all about the journey you undertake as opposed to reaching the destination quickly. Sometimes our journeys have bends and hitches along the way, and that's okay. Now, with all that said, let's talk about my specific journey. What did I feel while playing Tunic? Well, for the first third of the game, discovery remained at the forefront. Fueled by my desire to find pages to the manual, I explored the world of Tunic and began to understand what I needed to do. I didn't have much trouble with the common enemies, and if I ever died, I felt compelled to approach combat with a different strategy. I also made it through a lot of the areas with barely any health left, so reaching a new save point really gave me a sense of accomplishment. I had survived. Everything was smooth sailing until I reached the first real boss of the game. Remember how Tunic changes a man? I died so many times fighting this one boss, though remarkably, I never felt frustrated. Did the combat suddenly take on a noticeably higher level of difficulty? Absolutely, but I didn't feel like the fight was unfair. I just needed to get good. And sure enough, I would persevere and triumphantly vanquish that enemy after what felt like ages. It was actually only about a dozen attempts, but the difficulty spike wore me down. It was at this point that I Googled if Tunic was considered a difficult game. I skimmed through the first few search results, saw comparisons to Dark Souls. Wait, Dark Souls? Great! My cutesy adventure game about a fox was being compared to the video game most synonymous with difficulty. But I would not be deterred. I beat Cuphead. Nothing could stop me and my furry fox friend. So on to the second third of the game. This phase sees the game world open up a lot more as you're tasked with going to 3 new areas. Each area felt distinct and fun to explore, and featured new game mechanics that would help with traversal. I fully enjoyed each of these areas and have no complaints off the top of my head. Each area would of course end with a boss fight, and based on how my previous boss encounter felt, I was pretty worried about the difficulty. And yeah, the fights proved a challenge at first. But you know what? Seeing Tunic compared to Dark Souls changed my frame of mind. Knowing the fights would be difficult made me approach them with more strategy. Unfortunately, the strategies I found felt cheesy. I won't give specifics, so let's just use images from the SpongeBob movie instead. If you know, you know. And if you don't, congratulations! Consider this a lost page of the game manual. Now, you might be saying, wait, you defeated the bosses in a game known for tough combat. Shouldn't you feel proud? I mean, I still felt satisfied in defeating these bosses, but it didn't hit quite the same way as the boss from earlier. I felt that I had defeated that boss after dying over and over again. With the next 3 bosses, I felt that I had exploited them. Did I actually beat them with skill? Did reframing Tunic as a game with difficult combat change my mentality for the worse? Had I simply gotten better at the game? I'm sure all of these sentiments are partly true, but ultimately, I was still enjoying my experience. But now we gotta talk about the final third of the game, which dragged my morale down quite a bit. And there are a few reasons for this. The new area you enter has a dark and depressing atmosphere, and the fox is afflicted with some status conditions that I won't describe further. But the biggest factor for my morale was me. It was pretty late in the night when I reached this area, and I decided to plow on ahead instead of getting some much needed sleep. I've always been one to push for completion just for completion's sake, and haven't always taken the time to stop and smell the roses with games. I said earlier how adventure games are about the journey and not the destination, and in this moment, I had lost sight of that. I did eventually go to bed and finish the final 10% of Tunic the next day with a fresh mind. Huzzah! I defeated the final boss! Except not really. I knew there were multiple endings to Tunic and that I did not reach the true ending. I knew the gist of what I needed to do to get to the true ending, but I really wasn't feeling up to doing that. It would involve a lot of puzzle solving, and rather than plow on ahead like I did the previous night, I decided to give Tunic a rest. And honestly, that's character growth for me. My goal with this channel is to be more reflective and view video games as experiences to be had rather than as things to complete. I may not have truly completed Tunic, but I definitely experienced Tunic, and I'm grateful for having done so. And when the time comes and I decide to go back and reach the true ending, it will be because I wanted to expand upon my experience and not just cross a game off my backlog. Oh, and to all you Zelda fans out there, yes, I'm down to give the series a shot now. Thinking Link to the Past, but if you've got a suggestion, leave a comment.